Midnight, Chapter 6. Miss Laura Wellburn's Adventure. When Midnight came home to the Hidden Valley with Red, Ned, and Major, and Jip, and Cat, he found that Dora had been worrying about them so much that she had got quite thin and sensible. But she soon cheered up and was as silly as ever, and she took Midnight for a ride on her back and pretended to be a wild bucking bull as she used to when Midnight was a little boy. While Midnight was away from the valley, she had had a beautiful calf, which staggered when it walked, and she was offended with Cat for saying that her baby was drunk. After they had settled down in the cave again, Cat had a serious talk with Midnight, and this is what he said. "We must lie low," said Cat, "and give up bushranging for a while. You are in great danger. There are more troopers and black trackers looking for you than ever there were before, and they know about the cottage in the orchard. And it is possible that the Queen may have bushranged that from us already. A great many people have seen your face, including the Governor and Judge Pepper and Trooper O'Grady. The black trackers know about your sheepskin shoes, and they may even know Red Ned's hoof marks. We must stay in the valley and never go out or make any fresh tracks, because if they track us here, then there is no place in the colony that is safe for us." "That is good advice, Cat," said Midnight, "and I think we need a holiday after all this arresting and escaping." "Sooner or later," said Cat, "we might build a canoe and go bushranging down the river. That way we would leave no tracks, but it would be dangerous if we were seen, because then they would know that our hideout is on the river." "Well, we won't do it yet," said Midnight, "but it is an interesting plan, and it would be good practice for later on when I become a pirate." "Are you going to become a pirate?" said Cat. "Some day," said Midnight. "However, we shall wait until Dora's calf is grown up." Weeks went by without anybody going out of the valley, except Major, who flew and left no tracks. They were all feeling quite safe and rather bored, when one day a startling thing happened. Midnight was down at the gate mending a place where the kangaroos had broken it, and whistling at his work when Major came flying overhead calling his "Danger" call, and wheeling in a great circle round and round something in the bush. And as Midnight straightened up and listened, he heard the sound of a horse's hoofs coming towards the gate. Dropping his tools, he ran for the cave and seized his gun and lay down behind a rock to watch the gate. It's not easy to see who is opening the gate because of the rocks and bushes in the way, but it seemed to him that it was a person dressed all in green. He whispered to Cat, who had crept up beside him, "Can you see? Who is it? How many people?" "I can't tell," said Cat in a serious voice, narrowing his eyes. "What shall I do?" asked Midnight. "You have not done a murder yet," said Cat. "This is the time to begin." "Must I?" said Midnight. "You must," said Cat sternly. "I'm sorry." By this time, the person who had opened the gate had got back into the saddle and was riding toward the caves. As he peered through the rocks and bushes, Midnight made out that it was a person wearing a long green skirt and riding side saddle. "It is a lady," gasped Midnight. "So it is," said Cat in a wise voice. "It is Miss Laura Wellborn," cried Midnight. "I thought so," said Cat, more wisely still. "What shall I do now?" asked Midnight. "Shoot her," said Cat. "Never!" cried Midnight, jumping up and leaving the gun behind the rock. "I would sooner die." And he tied his handkerchief over his face and pulled down his hat and strode off to meet Miss Laura Wellburn, while Cat slowly and thoughtfully followed. "Aha, Captain Midnight," said Laura, as he came up. "I have tracked you down at last." "You have indeed, Miss Wellborn," said Midnight, "and I hope you are all alone." Quite alone," said Miss Laura, "and rather proud of myself, I assure you." "As well you might be, Miss Wellborn," said Midnight, "but you have put yourself in an awkward position." "Why, Captain Midnight?" said Laura. "What do you mean?" "I mean," said Midnight, "that I cannot let you go home again, and you will have to stay here in the secret hideout forever after." "But how romantic!" cried Miss Laura. "Do you think so?" said Midnight. "Truly?" "Quite delicious," said Miss Laura. "I shall be your maid Marian, and we shall go bushranging together, and we shall be the talk and terror of Australia." Midnight was getting very hot under his handkerchief with blushing, and he said, "Do you mean that you are going to marry me, Miss Wellborn?" "Why, not if it makes you so frightened," laughed Miss Laura. "It does make me frightened," said Midnight. "It makes me shy." "Ah, pure manly heart," said Miss Laura. "Now help me from the saddle, Captain Midnight, and lead me to your dreadful den, and we shall talk about it." So Midnight helped her and took her down, leaning on his trembling arm, to the cave, and gave her his best sheepskin to sit on. And all the time, as he looked around the cave, Miss Laura was saying, "But how brigand-like, and how exquisitely barbaric." And all the time, as Miss Laura was saying these things, Cat was looking at her with cold blue eyes. At last, when Miss Laura had admired everything in the cave, and had told Midnight the names of all the painters whose pictures it reminded her of, She said with a beautiful blush, "Captain Midnight." "Miss Wellborn?" said Midnight in a rather shaky voice, because he was more in love than ever. "Would you do something for me?" said Miss Laura. "I would do anything," said Midnight, "anything at all." "Then," said Miss Laura, "unveil that face, which has been gazed upon by Mrs. Schiffel and 500 other ladies, but has never been gazed upon by me." "My face, Miss Wellborn?" said Midnight. "Do you want to see my face?" "Captain Midnight," said Miss Laura, "I yearn, I crave, I thrill in the anticipation of seeing your face." Although Midnight did not always understand the long words that Miss Laura used, he did understand that she wanted to see his face rather a lot. So he took off his hat and pulled down his handkerchief, and then stood looking at her expectantly. Whatever it was that he expected, it was not what Miss Laura did, which was to put her hands over her face and burst into tears. "Why, Miss Wellborn," said Midnight, "what is the matter?" "You are not handsome at all," sobbed Miss Laura, "and your hair needs cutting, and you're only a boy." "I'm a young man," cried Midnight crossly. "Look, feel my face and my whiskers." "I hate and despise your preposterous whiskers," said Miss Laura. "Take me home immediately to my father." "Oh, Cat," sighed Midnight, whose feelings were so hurt that he was more miserable than he had ever been in his life. "What shall I do now?" "Come outside," whispered Cat, too low for Miss Laura to hear. So Midnight and Cat went out of the cave, and Cat said to Midnight, "This is very serious." "I know," said Midnight. "You cannot take her home," said Cat. "She would tell everybody about the hidden valley." "I know," said Midnight, "but what else can I do?" "Shoot her," said Cat. "No," said Midnight, "she is too beautiful." "Well then," said Cat, "the only thing to do is keep her prisoner, and perhaps when she is used to us she'll be less preposterous. But I doubt it." "I shall do my best," said Midnight sadly, and he went back into the cave and told Miss Laura that she was a prisoner. "Is that your last word?" said Miss Laura. "Yes," said Midnight. "You will rue this hour," said Miss Laura ferociously, and she did not speak to Midnight again all that day. He tried to be nice to her by showing her his collections of bird eggs and butterflies and stones, but she only yawned and made a face as if they were disgusting. She made a face at all the things in the cave, which she had admired before, as if they were disgusting, and when Midnight cooked her supper, which Midnight and Cat thought was a very good supper, if not the best supper they had ever seen and tasted, she pushed her plate away and made a face as if that was disgusting. But worst of all, when Midnight suggested after supper that she might like to play draughts with him, she made a face as if he was disgusting. After that, she took her sheepskin into a corner and lay down and cried all night in a very loud and public manner. The next day she decided to start talking again, but that was worse than her silence and her faces, because she went out of her way to hurt everybody's feelings. When she saw Midnight and Dora playing at being a bullfighter and a fierce Spanish bull, she said, "Master, whatever your name may be, do you think it wise to excite that ramshackle old cow?" She told Major that his voice was like fingernails scraping on a blackboard. She annoyed Jip by calling him Pup, and asked him if he would like her to scratch his tummy, and she embarrassed Red Ned by knowing the names of all the parts of his body and finding fault with them. The only person she was not rude to was Cat. That was because she was clever and had a plan. When night came, Miss Laura sat on her sheepskin next to the lantern and let down all her beautiful hair. She bushranged one of Midnight's brand new hairbrushes, which had never been used, but that did not stop her from making a face as if it was disgusting, and she slowly brushed her hair and sang to herself a beautiful song. She was so pretty, and her hair was so long and lovely, that Cat was fascinated, and he crept up and sat down beside her to watch. Then Miss Laura reached out her hand and began to stroke Cat as if she hardly noticed what she was doing, and before long Cat was purring. After a while, Miss Laura said, almost as if she was talking to herself, "I think it is very noble-minded of you, who are so clever, to work and plan for such a stupid boy." "He is not exactly stupid," murmured Cat. "It is only—" Then he realized that he had talked to Miss Laura, and he looked very foolish. But Miss Laura laughed and went on stroking him. "I had guessed your secret," she said. "What were you going to say?" "It is only that he was brought up in a forest by his father and 5 animals," said Cat, "and he hardly knows anything about human beings." "Well," said Miss Laura, "you may call him innocent, but I call him stupid, and I am glad that I have you to talk to." From that time on, Cat was always with Miss Laura, and he told her things that he had never told Midnight, such as that he was a prince in his own country. He told her that all Siamese cats were of royal blood. He told her that all cats could talk if they wanted to, but that they usually only talked to witches because witches were the only human beings who had anything interesting to say. And every time he told her some new story, Miss Laura clapped her hands and cried, "Oh!" One day, when Midnight was outside the cave and wanted to ask Cat's advice about something, he called for Cat, and Cat did not come. So Midnight went into the cave, and there was Cat sitting in Miss Laura's lap, as usual. "Miss Wellborn," said Midnight sternly, "I must ask you not to pet my cat when I want him." "I cannot think what the boy means," said Miss Laura to no one in particular. "Cat is being so polite as to entertain me." When she said that, Midnight had a funny little pain in his heart. He was jealous of Cat, his best friend. "I do not know what Mr. Schiffer would think," he said, "of a young lady who spends all her time talking to cats." "At least he is a gentleman," said Miss Laura. "A gentleman?" said Midnight crossly. "Why, he's not even British." "I would sooner talk to a Siamese prince," said Miss Laura, "than to an uncouth youth whatever." As soon as he heard her call him an uncouth youth, which is a very rude and hurtful thing to say to a young man of 17, and Miss Laura knew this when she said it, Midnight strode out of the cave and threw himself down in the grass and swore the worst swear word that he knew, which was not very bad because he had been well brought up. As a matter of fact, he said darn, 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 darn about 90 times. When he was tired of swearing, he just lay in the grass with his eyes shut. Presently he heard a rustle in the grass, and he knew that Cat was sitting beside him, but he only rolled over on his side and turned his back to Cat. Cat reached out and touched Midnight's cheek with a velvet paw. "Go away," said Midnight. "Midnight," said Cat sadly, "we must do something." "What?" growled Midnight. "We must get rid of this lady," said Cat, "or she will break up our gang." "This is all very well," said Midnight, "but how are we going to get rid of her?" "I don't know," said Cat. "If she were not so beautiful, we could tie a rock around her neck and sink her in the river." "But she is beautiful," said Midnight. "I know," said Cat. "And I am in love with her," said Midnight. "So am I," said Cat. "Then I think she will be here forever after," said Midnight, hurting my feelings more and more. "That is out of the question," said Cat, in a desperate voice. "We shall have to do something, and the something that we shall have to do is going to give us a lot of trouble." "What plan is this?" asked Midnight nervously. "We shall have to let her go home," said Cat, "and we shall have to leave the Hidden Valley and go somewhere else because we shall never be safe here again." "Where can we go?" asked Midnight. "I don't know of any other place to live." "We could go to the Never Never Desert," said Cat, "where all the poets and explorers go to die. There would be no bushranging to do there, but we might find some new rivers or lakes or something, and name them after the Queen, and then she might forgive us for being bushrangers, and we might get gold medals from the Royal Geography Society." "That's a good plan, Cat," said Midnight, growing excited. "Come, let us tell Miss Wellborn to go home, and start today for the Never Never Desert." "It would not be gentlemanly," said Cat, "to let her go all the way home alone. She might meet a bushranger on the way. No, you must take her some place where her father can fetch her. And the best place I can think of is the Zamia Creek Hotel." "Well, we must be gentlemanly," said Midnight, and he went into the cave and said to Miss Laura, "Miss Wellborn, we are going to take a ride together, and then I am going to set you free." "That does not surprise me," said Miss Laura, smiling, "for I knew I should win in the end." Midnight did not quite know how to take what she had said, so he went away and saddled Miss Laura's mare without saying anything. When Miss Laura came out of the cave, wearing her hard round hat for riding, she looked rather happy, and she was quite polite to Midnight as he helped her into the saddle, which made him happy too. As they rode out of the valley and through the bush which smelled hot and sweet and rather like eucalyptus in the summer weather, Miss Laura even talked to Midnight and told him about her mother and father and about her friends and about a lot of things that she had never mentioned before. So Midnight began to think that it would have been rather nice to stay with her in the Hidden Valley, if only he would be sure that she would always be in such a good mood. After a while, Miss Laura asked where they were going, and Midnight told her that he had planned to leave her at a rather lonely hotel in the bush where her father could come for her. Miss Laura thought this was a very good plan, and for the rest of the journey, as they walked and cantered through the bush, she talked cheerfully to Midnight and Cat, and admired Red Ned's noble-mindedness, and Jip's cleverness, and Major's feathers, and was so nice that they were all quite sorry she was leaving them. At last they came to a clearing in the bush beside a road, and in the clearing was the Zamia Creek Hotel. "Well, Miss Wellborn," said Midnight, "here we must leave you, and I am sorry that we have had to keep you prisoner for so long." "Captain Midnight," said Miss Laura, "you must not run away and leave me like this. Do please, for friendship's sake, come into the hotel with me, and let us have a glass of wine and a piece of cake together before we part." "I have sworn an oath," said Midnight, "never to drink wine again, and anyway, I think it might be dangerous." "But the place is so lonely," said Miss Laura, "that you could easily escape into the bush if it were dangerous. And besides, nobody will know you without your handkerchief over your face. They will think you are my brother." "Oh, very well," said Midnight, and he left Red Ned to graze in the bush and went on leading Miss Laura's mare to the hotel. It was a long, white, one-story building with a veranda all around, and flowers and pots in pots on the veranda. A nice place for the country mail coaches to stop on a hot summer day. "Are you coming in, Cat?" asked Laura. "No," said Cat thoughtfully. "I think I shall wait outside just in case," and he hid himself under the veranda where he could hear what people said in the hotel. "Why," said Miss Laura, "I don't believe that Cat trusts me." "Please don't think that, Miss Wellborn," said Midnight. "We all trust you very much," which made Miss Laura laugh to herself in a peculiar manner. When they were sitting in the cool parlour of the hotel, the landlord came to see what they would like to have, and Miss Laura smiled so sweetly that he was quite confused by her beauty, and said that they would have tea, as her brother had sworn an oath never to drink wine again. The landlord laughed and said that the young gentleman was very wise, but that he was glad that not many young gentlemen swore the oath, or the world would be a hard place for landlords. As the landlord was going away, Miss Laura leaned over the back of her chair and said, "Oh, and let us have a little seed cake, if you please." She touched the landlord's hand with her hand as she spoke, and he looked surprised and hesitated for a moment before he went out. Midnight noticed this, and he hardly knew what to think. He did not say anything at first, but he took his pistol out of his coat and laid it on the table in front of them. "Goodness," said Miss Laura, "whatever is that for?" "Miss Wellborn," said Midnight, "I am not going to say that I don't trust you, but just in case you gave the landlord a note when you touched him, then I am prepared." "How suspicious you are," said Miss Laura gaily, but she blushed just a trifle. Midnight kept his eyes on the door and his hand on his pistol. "The first trooper who comes in," he said, "is a dead man." But nobody did come in until 5 minutes later, and then it was only a young Irish maid with the tea things on a tray. Midnight slid the hand holding his pistol under the table and watched the maid very carefully in case she might be Trooper O'Grady in disguise. But she had hardly any whiskers, and she did nothing except set the things out on the table and go away again. "Well," said Miss Laura cheerfully as she poured the tea, "do you feel safe now?" "I don't know," said Midnight, still watching the door. "Come," said Miss Laura, "drink your tea, for this is the last meal we shall have together, and it ought to be a pleasant one." The cup and the saucer were placed before Midnight. Still holding the pistol in his left hand, he lifted the cup. He drank one sip and he laughed. He drank a second sip and he cried. He drank a third sip and he fell fast asleep. When he woke up, he was back in the great grey jail by the sea, and Trooper O'Grady was picking his pockets and washing his face with a kind of scent called eau de cologne, which is very good for